The most important is not really the word, it have an importance, but it's your general mindset and what you want to explain.
I think you knew maybe that I had applied to become an AV organizer.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, it's been a long process because there's a lot with the applications, and it's pretty thorough. They have a lot of questions. They want to make sure that you understand everything.
It's always good to see people engaging and committing for animal liberation. It's what we want. I support AV. So yeah, it's awesome, and I am sure that you will gain a lot of experience in the process.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it because there are certain flaws that I can see in our community, just generally with the kind of language that we're using and all that. You and I have talked about that at length. So yeah, it does seem like more people, if we're following what AV's protocol is, it does seem to be falling in line, but some people still like to give it their own spin, which of course we don't want to ruin individuality and individual outreach styles. But I think that sometimes we can be more mindful the kind of words that we use, the kinds of messages that we're sending, even when it's not intentional, but we don't realize the kind of implications we're making with the words that we use.
For sure. And do you have some example of things that you have seen on the ground and who say, maybe I will talk to this person later?
So yeah, absolutely. And I haven't fully fleshed this idea out, but maybe we can here. But the kind of like this trope that keeps going around in some of my local activism events, like when they're doing outreach, is that what they're doing is they're more focused on highlighting the hypocrisy in our actions and beliefs, which I think is good, and AV does emphasize that and prioritize that. And I think it can be a good tool in getting people to change, right? They're saying, okay, I want to be consistent, I want to be aligned. But I think when it comes to the thing about when it depends on what kind of question we're asking. And so a lot of folks here will say things like, do you believe that animal abuse is right or wrong? And they'll use the word abuse, and then they'll say, that most people are going to say no, animal abuse is wrong, and then they like point to the screen and they're like, well, wouldn't you call this abuse and all that? And it's like, yes, there are definitely the horrific conditions and all that, but I don't think that it's not dismantling this idea that they have in their head, because they can see that and say like, yes, it's horrific. And even if maybe they can recognize that they're being hypocritical and say, I know that I'm doing something that goes against my values, but still they're an animal. It's only an animal, and they could like always fall back on that belief. That like, well, it's still an animal that exists to serve me. So even if it's abusive, even if it's wrong, So yeah, the questionnaire that they go through is that as they're outreaching, they say, hey, do you think if I asked 100 people here tonight if you think that animal abuse is okay, what do you think they would say? How many of the 100 do you think would say, no, I don't think it's okay? And then I think if you asked people, hey, do you think that using animals, that just using animals for us, not torturing them, but do you think that using animals is okay? You're going to get a very different answer. You're not going to get almost 100% of people saying no, that's wrong. So that's why, like, that's just something that I've been thinking about, like the whole questionnaire. And saying, do you believe that animal abuse is okay? Or do you believe that animal use is okay? Do you think that you would get different responses if you asked people that in the street?
Yeah, for sure. But it doesn't really matter. Because my approach is a different word. What I ask myself is, do you rather prefer animals to be free or to be subjugated? 99.9% of people say, yeah, free, of course. And after we go alongside the other question, right? And in one point, welfarism comes up in the discussion. Mm-hmm. And people start to say, yeah, but you know, I am not against if we can take animals and exploit them in a good way. I am not against that. And it's okay, because people brought up welfarism because it's the mentality of the culture where we are. So after that, when welfarism is in the discussion, which is 100% of the time, the goal is to help people understand why it's not about how we exploit animals, but about the fact to exploit animals. Mm. So I don't think that the very word in the beginning have a lot of importance, because if you speak about abuse, about freedom, about use, you will always have welfarism. Mm-hmm. People have this mentality that we had when we were non-vegan. We were like that. So it's not a big deal for me. The goal of the discussion is to help people understand why welfarism is wrong and why we should talk about animal freedom. Mm-hmm. So if you want to use the word abuse, if you want to use the word use, if you want to use the word freedom, like me, mm-hmm. as long as you help people understand why the problem is exploitation itself, mm-hmm. for me, it's not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe I'm fixating on it too much, but I just think that they're very different questions, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think that like we can get to that question of welfarism quicker if we're saying that like we're not talking about animal abuse, we're talking about the perception of them as objects, mm-hmm. you know? So it's like, I think that it's just pretty different. And this guy is somebody that I've had that conversation with about like the real meaning of veganism. And I think he's still stuck on it being more of a utilitarian thing, more of a harm reduction thing. I hate to think that in my community, there could be somebody who is sending a message that doesn't really align with what the founders wanted. And, you know, it can muddy the waters a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. If you have a different perspective, for example, if you are more utilitarian, it's different at this point. It's true. But it doesn't really rely on words, because you can use the word abuse and be an utilitarian, but also be a deontologist, right? Because all animal exploitation are abuse. Abuse, if you look at the definition, it's the fact to use someone wrongly. But since there is no good way to use animals, it will always be wrong. So mm-hmm. if we just stay in the definition, it will always be abuse. So if you want to use that, it's okay. And you can explain why the problem is the very fact to use animals, right? And people will understand that everything is abuse. In fact, it's not the violent things, it's the simple fact to decide for an animal what they will do, you know?
Yeah.
But the problem is more about the mindset, not the word for me, it's the mindset. Because if you are rigid on wording, it's a lot better in general, because it's very rigid, and for me, the most important is not really the word. It have an importance, but it's your general mindset and what you want to explain. Right? It's a slight difference.
Yeah, no, and I think that you and I, because we have had conversations, and you and I understand the that foundation of veganism as a principle of freedom and as promoting their liberty and all that. Like, we get it. So I'm not too rigid about using words like that when we are discussing things. You know, that can be flexible, for sure.
For sure.
But I think it's with this activist and maybe some others in my community, it's using abuse and then never getting to that point of saying that the issue is not the conditions, it's that mentality. Like, they would say it's abuse. Look at the way that we're grinding up the male chicks on the first day. Look at the way that they're barely able to move. Like, you know, and all these things about like the conditions that they're kept in, rather than the oppressive mindset. So that's I would like to give maybe a workshop on that in my community or something, so that
Yeah, for sure. It's true that if one people doesn't have the mindset behind and talk too much about the condition, but without really asking the right question about, is the way we exploit animals the problem, or is exploitation? It's a problem, of course. So first, the mindset. You have to have your student, I want to say, first align with the mindset, and after that you can go to more liberty in the world. But let's focus on really freedom. Let's focus on really the fact that the problem is to impose, to subjugate animals to our will for our beneficial taste and desire, of course.
Yeah.